Hello and welcome once again to the Political Circus Weekly Podcast. I am your host, Mike Ursery, and you are listening to episode number 12. Political Circus Weekly Podcast is one of the many podcasts on the Think Liberty Network. You can find the Think Liberty Network at most places where podcasts are hosted, to include Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many others. Well, folks, we are past the midway point of January. And even though this is only the first month of 2019 and we're not even through this entire first month yet, news cycles are already eclipsing 2018. I know that sounds crazy, but here we are. In the news this past week, President Trump hosted the Clemson Tigers at the White House after they won the college football national championship when they defeated the Alabama Crimson Tide, and he offered them a very hearty cuisine of burgers and fries. Yes, you heard that correctly. These are burgers and fries that came from various fast food restaurants. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said in an interview that Democrats are going to run a train on the progressive agenda, and Gillette has the nation talking about its latest ad campaign. So we'll start with this White House dinner. And, the Clemson Tigers, like I said, that they had defeated Alabama in the national championship. And this was a really shocking defeat for Alabama. And I'm not saying that just because Clemson beat them, although I will say this, throughout the entire college football season, I was telling myself that Alabama was just on a level above everyone else. If you follow college football, you probably saw what Alabama did throughout their entire season, up until the Clemson game anyway. But they were just manhandling any team that got on a football field with them. But national championship game was a bit different because they were held scoreless throughout the entire second half. Clemson scores 31 unanswered points, and they beat Alabama 44-16. Well, as is tradition, the Clemson football team was invited to the White House. Now, the government is still shut down, and White House chefs are currently not working. So there was no one there to prepare a meal for when the guests arrived at the White House. But what the president did was he still had a meal that was there for them. And what he did was he paid for fast food. Yes, he paid for it out of pocket. It was, I think I saw in the news, I think he paid $3,000 or something like that. And he brought in Big Macs from McDonald's. He brought in Whoppers from Burger King. He brought fries. He brought wraps. And he also brought some salads too, because, you got to give him the whole fast food experience. Have some salads there. And when the players and the coaches arrived, they saw a table full of fast food. Of course, everything was still in burger boxes. The burger boxes were stacked up on top of each other. And if you saw news articles about this, or even if you saw really anything on the internet at all about it, you likely saw the pictures of this huge table with all these burgers and stacked on it. They had fries there, and to keep the fries warm, they put heat lamps over them. And it was a lot of fast food. And news reports about this, they showed up everywhere. And because it was sports related, it also showed up on a lot of sports websites. And one of the outlets that did a story about this was Sports Illustrated. And one of the things that Sports Illustrated did was they placed some of the focus on Matt Bockhorst. He's a redshirt freshman offensive guard for Clemson. And what they did was they had embedded a tweet in their story about the White House dinner. It was a tweet from Barstool Sports, and it shows pictures of the food. And there's a reply from a Twitter user that shows a picture of Bockhorst. He's looking down at this food, and he's smiling at it. Like, he looks like he's ready to dig in. And this reply tweet had said, "Find someone who looks at you the way this guy looks at a tray of Big Macs." Bockhorst saw that, and he quote tweeted that user's tweet, and his quote tweet had said, "I mean, you're not just going to not eat the Big Mac stacked in a pile, right?" And then he also told another Twitter user that he pocketed 2 chicken wraps and a quarter pounder to take with him when he left. Now, Matt Bockhorst very likely does not listen to this podcast, but if he ever does, Dude, I need you to know that you are my spirit animal. I would have done the exact same thing that you did, except I probably would have left with 2 quarter pounders. I would have looked at that food on the table the same way you did, and I also would have went to town on those Big Macs. And there were other pictures that I saw also of other football players who were just walking around with burgers stacked on plates, and it looked like they all had a really good time. Well, reactions were afoot before, during, and after this White House dinner. A lot of these reactions came from people who will never be invited to the White House by any president for any reason. But there were a lot of reactions. They were mixed. Some were positive. A lot were negative. One of the more notable reactions was from Trevor Lawrence, who is Clemson's true freshman quarterback. By the way, if you follow college football, keep your eye on Trevor Lawrence because he is going to be an early favorite for the Heisman Trophy next year, and he's probably going to win the Heisman. That is my pick right now for who wins the Heisman Trophy next year. But according to USA Today, one player, they didn't say who, but one player said that he thought Trump was joking when he said there would be fast food. And there was another, they said that while there, another player had said that the team nutritionist was going to have a fit after learning about what the players ate. And yes, Division I college football athletes, they do have very strict diets that they are required to follow. The universities will hire team nutritionists to monitor what these kids are eating, and they have very strict regimens as far as diet and as far as fitness that they have to follow, because these are, Division I college football, especially in Power 5 conferences, these are the most elite college athletes, especially at places like Clemson and Alabama, teams that consistently compete for the national title each year. Well, that same USA Today article, what it did was it cited a quote from one person, a registered dietitian named Alyssa Rumsey. And she said in this article, she said, food for athletes should be looked at as fuel, an aid for recovery, and also a means of enjoyment and team bonding. Okay. They can't bond over Big Macs and Whoppers? I'm pretty sure they did. And those McDonald's fries. I'm pretty sure they had a good time that night, and I'm sure there was lots of bonding going on. And as for fuel, look, the season just ended. Okay, they're not taking the field again until spring football in March and April, and that fast food will be completely out of their systems by then. One night of fast food like that is not going to do anything to their performance later on. The same article, it cited a quote from another registered dietitian, Jessica Cording, who is based in New York City, the article said, and she says, "This sets a bad example. It's perpetuating this idea that college students are supposed to be eating junk food. It's a missed opportunity to show that healthy food can be accessible, enjoyable, and fuel young athletes." Okay, did I miss something? Does Article 2 of the Constitution state that the President of the United States should be setting good examples related to diet and nutrition? I haven't seen that before, and if it's there, please let me know so I can go back and read it again. But I did not see that there before. Also, if you're expecting Donald Trump to be that guy who sets good examples of diet and nutrition, you're going to be let down every time. It was reported a while back that he lives on cheeseburgers and Diet Coke. So he's definitely not going to be that guy. I will share with you my opinion on this. The government is shut down and White House chefs aren't showing up for work. Trump paid for this meal out of pocket. Could he have afforded something much more formal than Big Macs? Yeah, he could. The man is a billionaire. He could have paid for a prime rib or filet mignon if he wanted to. But did he do that? No, he didn't. He used his own money, and because he used his own money, he is the one who decided what would be on the menu that night. Was it tacky? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was pretty tacky. You're bringing guests to the White House and you feed them fast food? Yeah, of course it was tacky. Could he have called Clemson ahead of time and said, "Hey, what would you like when you visit the White House?" Yeah, sure, he could have done that. Should he? Maybe. But the one thing here I do like about this is that Trump paid for it with his own money. Now, if the government was not shut down, chefs at the White House would have prepared some five-star dinner. And do you know who would have paid for that? You and me. You and I would have paid for that. But that didn't happen here because the government is shut down. You can say a self-absorbed billionaire hooked some college kids up with a cheap meal, but I didn't have to foot the bill for it, so I'm really not that concerned about it. Moving on. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is in the news again. She's in the news because of something she said again. This time she did an interview with the Washington Post, and one part of this interview, they were asking her about the attacks from the right that have been coming, before she was sworn into Congress on January 3rd. And one attack in particular that they had asked her about was the Instagram photo that was supposed to be of her that turned out it wasn't a picture of her. It was the woman in the bathtub. I talked about it in last week's episode, and that was a really cringy story. I'm not going to really get into that again. But they asked her about it, and this was her response to that. She said, "I was surprised, and I was annoyed because it was a new tack. They've been for a very long time focusing on taking quotes out of context or manipulating them or making it seem as though I said things I didn't say. This was different in that it was an outright fraudulent thing. You can tell that they're getting into hysterics because now you're getting into my actual body, which is definitely crossing a level, definitely crossing a line. I also think it's encouraging because this is my 6th day in Congress at the time that she gave this interview, and they're out of all their artillery. The nude is supposed to be like the bazooka, like we're going to take her down. Dude, you're all out of bullets. You're all out of bombs. You're all out of all this stuff. What have you got left? I'm 6 days into the term, and you already used all your ammo. So enjoy being exhausted for the next 2 years while we run train on the progressive agenda." What? This one little phrase, "run train," appeared on just about every right-wing news site. It was on Town Hall, it was on the Federalist, it was on Fox News, the list goes on and on. But why wouldn't it, though? Some people might say, well, conservatives are taking this out of context. How do you take the phrase "run a train" out of context? That phrase has only one meaning. A train? It's a gangbang. AOC basically said Democrats want to gangbang the progressive agenda. Oh, man. She said they expended all their ammunition after only 6 days. Yeah, in one breath she says that, and then in the very next breath, she just gave them a resupply. As if to say, "You're out of ammo, here, take this." I've read reports on this, and they all have said it's unclear if she knows what the term means. So either they just haven't asked her what she meant by that, or maybe they tried to ask her and she just didn't respond, or I don't really know. I'm not going to get into that. Well, but yeah, okay, so she calls herself Alex from the Bronx, and she's talked a lot before about being a bartender in New York City. Oh, and she's also a millennial. So I am 99.99% sure she does know what that means. But why does she say it? I have no clue. But it does make for great comedy. I was laughing when I read this. The hits just keep on coming. Like I said, we're past that midway point of the first month of 2019, and the hits just keep on coming. What's really funny about this is that some are saying this sounds like something Trump would say, except it didn't come from Trump. It came from someone on the left. Folks, buckle up. This ride through 2019 is only just beginning. The last thing I'll talk about on this episode is this Gillette ad. You've probably already seen it in the news. A lot of people are already talking about it. But, here lately, we've seen some companies aspire to new levels of what people are calling wokeness. Last year, we saw it with Dick's Sporting Goods when they decided they would no longer sell firearms. until they made the announcement they would stop selling firearms. I actually had no idea that they sold firearms until they said they would no longer sell them. Anytime I ever walked into a Dick's Sporting Goods, it's to look for shoes or, workout attire. When you think about Dick's Sporting Goods, at least when I think about Dick's Sporting Goods, I definitely don't think about guns. So for so many years, Gillette has used the best a man can get as their slogan. And this past week, they released a new ad, and the theme of it was the best a man can be. And the ad, it takes on things such as bullying, sexual harassment, objectifying women, conduct towards women in the workplace, etc. And the ad is encouraging men to crack down on, quote, toxic masculinity, unquote, by encouraging each other to be better, saying that all men should be encouraging other men to not do the things that the ad talks about. Be the best a man can be. The ad has gotten mixed reviews, and once again, the nation is divided over a commercial. It happened in the middle of last year with Nike. You probably remember that Nike ad. The theme of that ad was believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything, and they had used Colin Kaepernick as their spokesperson, and that ignited a nationwide argument because Colin Kaepernick was already famous or infamous, however you choose to look at that situation, when it started back in 2016 whenever he was protesting police brutality, especially against minorities, and he was protesting racial inequality in the country. And his former protest was taking a knee during the national anthem, and that really had people, that had gotten a lot of mixed reviews. Some people liked it, some people absolutely hated it. And then later on, Nike chooses Colin Kaepernick as their spokesperson. And after that commercial launched, you had a lot of people upset, and you had people threatening to boycott Nike. As a result of that boycott, Nike's sales went up 31%. Now, first, I want to talk about what Nike did here. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. Look, Nike launched this ad campaign, and, Nike knew exactly what they were doing. They knew the kind of response that they would get, and they knew that it would benefit them in the end. They had no worries, and they definitely had no regrets. Do you know why they weren't worried? Because this is what Nike does. Nike is no stranger to using controversy to sell products. In the early 90s, Nike endorsed Charles Barkley, and that was a commercial with Charles Barkley saying, "I'm not a role model." He said, in the commercial, he was saying, "I'm not a role model. I'm not paid to be a role model. I am paid to wreak havoc on the basketball court. Parents should be role models. Just because I dunk a basketball doesn't mean I should raise your kids." And of course, that commercial definitely rubbed some people the wrong way, but Nike is still here. Nike is still a giant when it comes to shoes and other products as well. And then they also endorsed Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman had a reputation as a bad boy when he played. Well, at first he was a part of the Detroit Pistons, the bad boys of the NBA back in the 80s. And then he played for the Spurs, and then he also played for the Chicago Bulls for a while before retiring. But if you can remember that far back, you probably remember this commercial that Nike released where Dennis Rodman goes to visit Santa Claus in a mall, and he grabs Santa by his collar and pulls him up and says, "Listen up, Santa, I want whatever Dennis Rodman shoe Nike was selling." And Santa had told Rodman, he said, "You're really bad this year." Bad meaning not nice. And then Rodman looks at him and says, "I also led the league in rebounds." And then Santa was like, "Okay, we'll give you the shoes." So, yeah, Nike is no stranger to releasing any kind of controversial ad at all. Well, whenever Gillette launched this ad, I sat back after seeing it, I sat back and I wondered to myself if maybe Gillette was trying the same strategy. I wondered if the whole reason for this ad was not because they were attempting to be moral champions, but because they wanted to generate some buzz, which would bring them more attention, which would turn into free advertising. If that's the case, if they are just trying to bring more attention to their brand and generate this free advertising, this is a very questionable decision because men make up a majority of their client base, and a lot of men have expressed that they feel that this ad is generalizing all men, as if to say that all men do the things that appear in this ad. Now, if you've been paying attention to the happenings in this country over the past several years, you've noticed the amounts of wokeness taking place. Times are definitely changing. Public opinion is changing on a lot of social issues. Now I'm wondering if Gillette is trying to cash in on the wokeness regarding toxic masculinity. We've seen the beginning of the Me Too movement take place. We've seen a lot of women coming forward with allegations against very powerful men. For example, Harvey Weinstein. Is Gillette trying to cash in on wokeness? Again, a large part of their client base is men, so it's difficult to see how that could work if that indeed is what they are doing. This could backfire on them, get woke, go broke. It happened to Dick's Sporting Goods. Dick's Sporting Goods reported losses after they said they were going to stop selling guns. And we'll see if the same thing happens to Gillette. Something else that has happened is that an old Gillette ad has made its way back into the public eye. And I'm sure you've seen it. People have made memes out of this old Gillette ad. It's an old ad with several women wearing these blue skin-tight suits, and each woman has Gillette across her butt. Part of this, the Best a Man Can Be ad explains how men should stop objectifying women. But here was Gillette. I'm not sure when this ad came out, but here was Gillette using an ad to objectify women. Anytime someone proclaims that they're woke or anything like that, internet mobs will dig through their past and try to find anything to exploit. And this is happening a lot. It happens when someone becomes famous, or if they've done some kind of good deed, or if they've done anything positive that grabs attention of people across the country. Then people will start digging through their social media and digging through their past and try to find anything negative to exploit, anything to bring up. And, this is a trend that this needs to stop yesterday. I don't know if these internet mobs, if these people are just bored, or if they just feel the need to always be outraged over something. Whatever it is, this really needs to end. Internet mobs need to stop doing that. As for my own opinion of the Gillette ad, I don't care. I do not care about this ad. And you know why? Because this Gillette ad is not speaking to me. And there's nothing in this ad that I need to heed. You want to know something that I really like to do? I like to keep to myself and mind my own business. And if I were to spread a message to others, it would not be the best a man can be. It would not be better, be best, or anything like that. No, my message to everyone else is mind your own business. That's not just for men either. That's for everyone. Everyone, mind your own business. I have no new updates of the government shutdown. We're almost a month into the shutdown. In fact, Saturday, the day that this podcast released, or this podcast episode released, that was going to be day 28. So the longest shutdown in history continues to get even longer. We are still in the same place we were last week, meaning no ground has been made, no end in sight. Neither side, Trump or the Democrats, have shown any signs of buckling under pressure. And no one knows how long this is going to go on. As always, if there is anything new with that, I'll have it on next week's episode. But I probably won't have anything, judging by how things are going. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Political Circus Weekly Podcast. It's a part of the Think Liberty Network. If you haven't listened to the other podcasts on the Think Liberty Network, I highly recommend you check them out. Some really good stuff there. While you're at it, check out all of our work. You can find Think Liberty on Facebook. You can also find us on Twitter and Minds at Think_Liberty. We're on Instagram. Search for Think Liberty, all one word. And you can also find our work on our website, www.think-liberty.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you all back here again next week.